Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have iron meat. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Retroware, Iron Meat released in September of 2024 for all current major platforms. The version we're looking at today specifically is the Nintendo Switch version. This is a title I've really been looking forward to since having played the demo during Steam's Summer Next Fest. What kind of game is it? It's a run and gun, very much in the style of Contra, so if you like those kind of games, you'll like Iron Meat. It has great gameplay and good replayability, thus making it an easy recommend from the chef. Diving into the main menu. So when you start the game, you can choose to play it one player or two player, where it does support co-op, and these games play so well in two player, that's what we're going to be showing you. Once you get here, here's where the fun begins. So the game has 30 unlockable skins that you can select for your character. But it doesn't end there. In addition to those 30 skins, you can also mix and match those skins with whatever combination you want. The head, the body, the arms, and the legs. So you can make these really ridiculous looking characters. You want to have scientists with crazy, let's see if we can go in like crazy robot arms and like lizard feet. That's something you can do. Or if you want to be just Cthulhu, that's also a possibility. So I love that element of it, and that's where a lot of the replayability comes into play. There are a total of 30 different skins, and then you can mix and match them however you want for endless numbers of possibilities. With the character selection out of the way, then we dive into the level select. There are a total of 9 levels in the game, and you can start on any level once you've unlocked it. I do really appreciate that kind of flexibility, and we'll get into the difficulty here in a little bit, as that does play a bit of a factor in things. Starting our first stage, Forest, we're taken to the difficulty selection. Easy, normal, and hard. One of the biggest differences here is how many lives you are given at the start. Easy is 30, normal is 15, hard is 8. And those lives will always refresh when you start a new stage. That's very important to keep in mind. Just to keep things simple, we'll play the game on easy, just so we can talk about it while we play. As far as the story of Iron Meat, it's kind of what you would expect from this type of game. So, and there are some cutscenes that do go and show you that, but we'll skip past them. Basically, there's this all-consuming intergalactic biomass called the Meat, and we're Marines that have to fight against it. As far as the gameplay is concerned, this is very, very Contra-like in all of its gameplay. So we've got the ability to run around and shoot, as well as jump, and we can fire in the 8 directions around us. There's 2 different weapon slots, so you can swap between those using the bumps on your controller. If you hold the triggers, that will lock your character in place, allowing you to fire in all 8 directions around you. So fairly basic and what you would expect from this style of game. Throughout the course of our gameplay, we're going to encounter 8 different power-ups. If you count the point power-up, then there'll actually be 9. So keep that in mind. Our first couple power-ups are what you would expect. We've got our machine gun power-up, the M, which looks pretty similar to what you would expect from a Contra game, but we also have this neat little burst power-up, which for a short period of time, you'll have these shots firing out in multiple directions around the character that picks them up. It's actually really useful for crowd control, and unfortunately it's not seen in the game as often as I would like. We also have this S, which is a gun for this style of game that's very well known. A spread gun, though it does work a little bit differently in Iron Meat than it would in, say, Contra title itself. That lightning bolt does temporarily power up your shots and basically increases your rate of fire, which can be nice, but once again, it's just something that you don't encounter it as frequently. There are, as I was saying, like a total of 8 power-ups, so including the burst shot as well as the power-up, you've got 6 different guns that you can see. And on the course of our playthrough through the first stage, we will encounter most of them. So the B here, this one's kind of a wave shot. One of the things that's really great about the weapons, though, and we should be able to see here in just a moment, is it's actually possible to get a second power-up for that weapon and power up the shot itself. So something that you've kind of seen in some of the later entries in the Contra franchise, that's also here in Iron Meat. So one of the things that definitely helps Iron Meat stand out is its graphics style. So the pixel art is really well done in this particular title, but the thing that it makes it unique and is one of its like standouts is just how gory the meat that we're fighting against is. So it's all consuming as it turns enemies, both the soldiers that we're facing against as well as like vehicles like this, into these massive bio monstrosities where you've got metal and meat just intermixed in a really like kind of horrifying way, truth be told. The aesthetic of the visuals isn't really my cup of tea, but the gameplay is solidly here that I can definitely overlook a bit of pixel art that's just not necessarily my style. And as you can see, even in the background, it's just like a solid like a rain of blood, which just is the what you're going to go and see in this particular title. So throughout the course of the stage, we do encounter enemies like those necks that will kind of act as like little mini bosses. There's also those razor blade tanks that we've encountered once before. We'll see usually a couple mini bosses in every stage, and they do a good job of helping break up the pacing of your stage. Although one of the things that I was thinking about is that it would be nice if there was a little bit more variety in the gameplay in Iron Meat compared to say a title like that I'm comparing it to, the Contras, where at least Contra 3, for example, you have stages where you're changing up your perspective, stages where you're on bikes or moving through that way. Things like that would have been really satisfying to see as far as the gameplay is concerned here, as it's all run and gun action all the time, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but especially with how much you're going to be replaying certain stages in this particular title, it would have been nice to have just a little bit more variety to engage in. So we are encountering our second mini-boss here. So one of the ways that this mini-boss works is we have an enemy that shoots shots on us from the vehicle itself, and then we also have the missile launcher. Once you take out the enemy, you just start dealing with the missile launcher, and it's a good opportunity to talk about if you lose a life, what happens. If you lose a life in this particular title, then you lose the weapon that's equipped. So once again, pretty standard fare for a Contra-like title. So there are one-ups throughout the course of your gameplay. Well, if you hit certain point thresholds, you will earn additional lives. 20,000, 100,000, 200,000, and so on. However, one thing that can be noted about that is since our lives reset at the beginning of every stage, it's not really necessary. So encountering this tank, this is our first boss, and they're relatively straightforward, especially if you had the chance to learn some of their patterns. So like this one, we just have to duck, and we'll avoid those two beams. The weak points for this are both down below. You could also jump up and shoot the head, but that's unnecessary as the main turret does count as a weak point. With that, stage 1's complete. Now here's definitely, this kind of game is great to go and play with a second player in co-op. However, one of the things that makes playing with a second player so powerful is the points you gain at the stage are added together for your rank. So if you're actually looking to completion this game, you'll definitely want a second player along for the ride to help you earn additional rank. What do you get for the ranks? That's one of the ways that you unlock some of the cosmetics. So where I'm not even sure how many ranks there are, but where there are 30 ranks or 30 cosmetics, I wouldn't be surprised if there were at least 20 ranks. A lot of the cosmetics you do also unlock from achieving some of the achievements in the list that's provided in the game. Jumping a little bit out of order, so the next stage after Forest would normally be Tower. However, we've already seen, if you've played the demo, you would have seen Forest. And Tower, while an interesting enough stage, I don't feel shows off the sprite work and background work that you would see throughout the course of this game. So we've jumped to one of the later stages, City, so you can see just kind of some of the great pixel art and both our characters as well as the background itself to just more fully appreciate and explore the game that is Iron Man. And that's one of the things that, although, as I was mentioning, the art style might not necessarily be my choice aesthetic, I definitely have to appreciate just how good all the pixel art is, both in like the backgrounds as well as the foreground. We have a really foreboding like moon back there, very much Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask style, as well as all of what's going on behind us, like those buildings collapsing, snipers going and showing up to deal with us, enemies that I just can't take out. Really, for a lot of it, like the run and gun gameplay with great pixel art graphics is definitely what I'm here for in a title like Iron Man. And if that's what you're into as well, then I would think that's what you're here for as well. So as far as the minus flavors are concerned, really these ones are more just like personal preferences than real like complaints about the gameplay itself. So as far as gameplay is concerned, this one really does play excellently for a run and gun. The controls are really on point, so there's nothing really to complain about there. But one of the things I could go and say about the gameplay is that it would just be nice if there was a little more variety in what we're encountering. So a stage like this where we have the view more zoomed out and there's a lot going on with the environment is a nice touch. But there are speeder bikes in the game and even some animation where your characters do ultimately like get on those like air bikes. So a stage that used those, something a little bit more straight shoot 'em up style, would have been wonderful to see in this game. Or other gameplay, like maybe changing up the perspective to like a top-down perspective, for example, would have been incredible to see. In addition to that, the unlocks themselves, while it's really awesome that there's so many of them there, sadly they just are straight cosmetic. It would have been fun if some of the characters at least had differences in terms of abilities. So you've got like you've got some abilities that, or some characters that it looks like they would have like better jumping or maybe more speed, and it would have been awesome had that really been the case. Or maybe even changing up even your base shot just to change that gameplay up and incentivize you to get those upgrades, save for just the cosmetics. But as far as the plus flavors are concerned, while going and saying some of them like what I would want for some of those upgrades, actually having all of them there and then being able to unlock or spend the time in a game like this to unlock more character models is like definitely one of the fun elements that I feel Iron Meat brings to the table. And then, as we're seeing here in the stage itself, you've got that awesome pixel art, both in the background itself and in the sprites, both are the enemies as well as our own characters. And really, that's kind of what I'm here for in a game like Iron Man. Then lastly, you just have that solid, classic run and gun Contra-like feel that this is delivered so on point with this particular title. So if you're looking for a new title that's in the vein of classic 16-bit Contra, definitely check out Iron Man. A solid recommend from the chef. Alright, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.